You had me. You almost had me. All you guys on Reddit who say that everyone who plays Warcry outside of match play is basically one box bespoke warbands. I almost believed you. But this year, what I did is I put my feelers out. I put my feelers out into the community. I put out a whole bunch of questionnaires for you guys. I got over 2,000 responses. I'm going to share exactly with you guys what the results were. I'm going to tell you how the community plays, and for the most part, try to come to some kind of conclusions as to what we really want out of the game of Warcry. One thing I do want to say about this, and something that's important to keep in mind, is that the kinds of people who are going to answer these questionnaires are the kinds of people who are going to and are more likely to engage with the kind of content I create, because if they do that, then they'll get shown more of my stuff, and then they will be able to give answers. So when I talk about things about competitive players and casual players, compendium play, and all this kind of thing, you really need to bear that in mind, that because my YouTube channel is slightly more slanted to the competitive side of things, it's more likely that you'll get more competitive players answering than you would casual players. But I think you'll see from some of the results that we got that it's pretty surprising as to what we have. Okay, so to begin with, the biggest answer I think we have: how do people like building their warbands? What kind of player are you? I got almost 400 replies for this one, and we can see that 72% of the player base who answered this question say that they're casual players. So drawing from the decks, we're going to be drawing our battle plan, our deployment, our mission, our twist, all that kind of thing from the decks, and that's how we're going to generate our missions and the way we're going to play. And only 19% said that the majority of the games that you play are going to be match play. So we're talking fixed battle plans, the stuff that's in the core rulebook, any additional fixed battle plans that may have come out from Warhammer World or Warhammer Community, or any community-made battle plan. As long as it's fixed and you're not drawing cards, that's where that 19% is. So this actually really surprised me for my kind of content. The majority of people who are engaging with it are actually more on the casual side of things than they are on the holy match play stuff, which is a bit interesting, right? Because I mostly put out match play content. It seems that even casual players, so players who are drawing from those decks, like to engage with that kind of content as well. So I found that very interesting. But then again, we've got this question: are you a tournament player? So this is basically, I asked, would you play in an event, or have you played in an event, and would you do so again? The vast majority, 64%, said, yeah, I played in an event and I do want to again. 36% that they haven't, which kind of puts things at odds with the previous question. Because if the majority of players are saying, yeah, I'm a casual player, but the majority of my play is from drawing the decks, but on the other hand, I do like to go to match play events. I have been to match play events, and I want to again in the future. This poses, I think, a very interesting question about how tournament organizers should be organizing their events and how they should be catering to the different sides of the community. Because if, for the most part, you're drawing from the cards, but you still want to get more people into your event, I think there might be something to be said about generating your battle plans and how you do that in a fair way that's also seen to cater to those match play players. The next two charts that I want to show you are kind of go hand in hand with each other. What kind of warbands do you play, and how do you like building your warbands? What kind of warbands? Very straightforward: bespoke, compendium, or based around Bladeborn. Something like Soulblight Gravelords can do this very well, just taking Bladeborn warbands, mashing them together, and producing decent lists from that. The majority of people actually like to play bespoke, so that's anything from Hunters of One-Chi to Iron Golems, Untamed Beasts, all of that kind of thing. Around about a quarter of players like to build exclusively out of compendium, and 17% like to build out of Bladeborn. Bladeborn are kind of like bespoke warbands in the way that they're generated, in the way they play. You kind of buy the box and you do it. So I would say, for the most part, people love playing their bespoke warbands over actual compendium teams. So that's interesting. But then we go to the question of how do you like building your warbands? And this is where my comments about Reddit went beforehand. Overwhelmingly, the majority of players like flexible list building. This means being able to take allies, being able to take thralls and monsters and all that kind of thing, mixing within your Grand Alliance, being able to mix and match within your faction. That's overwhelmingly positive. People love that, and that's how people like to build. A small amount of people say, okay, I like pre-built teams. Now, To have pre-built teams, the only way you can really do that is by building out of bespoke warbands. You buy the box, there's the team, and that's what you do. So if we take these two in conjunction with each other, what kind of warband do you play, and how do you like playing your warbands? The conclusion that I'm getting out of this is that most people like playing bespoke, but they also like to ally in one or maybe two other things from outside of their faction to either enhance their experience or maybe get several bespoke boxes together and make some kind of mega constructed bespoke, that kind of thing. When we hear the arguments that, oh, I like to play in a bespoke only format, and I did actually put a video out about this, doing a tier list just for bespoke warbands. It did okay, nothing amazing. We have to bear in mind that that's kind of where the community is at that point. The thing is about Compendium and Bladeborn, they provide very good stepping on points into the game for Age of Sigmar players, for Warhammer Underworlds players. That's how I got into Warcry myself. I had a Nighthaunt army for Age of Sigmar, I started playing Warcry with it, and I kind of carried on from there. But slowly and surely, I did navigate to more and more bespoke style teams. At the moment, I'm playing Tarantula Brood. I played Hunters of Huanchi basically forever. I've played a lot of Wild Occult Hunters, and these are the kind of teams that I kind of like playing outside of Nighthaunt. And the only real reason why I play Nighthaunt not as the bespoke team as it is because I don't really like the Pie Guys. I don't think that they're any good. I don't think that their gimmick actually works out. I found myself migrating from Compendium teams over to bespoke, and I do wonder if other players do share that journey where they get into Warcry just with this bulk of miniatures and then end up playing their bespoke warbands because they do have that flavor and they are Warcry branded, and we do ultimately like to see those bespoke warbands on the table. I do wonder if going forward we see a third edition of the game, maybe a 2.5 or whatever, if that's a route Games Workshop is going to take with their release schedule, maybe looking at something more like a Kill Team 2.0 situation, where you had the Compendium teams, but those teams weren't really anything special, and they were really just a stepping on points to get into the game as a whole, to get in with those bespoke warbands. I think that might be interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if that is a route the Games Workshop decided to take. I asked people how many warbands they play. Half of players are sitting on between 1 and 5 warbands. There are some crazy people out there, like 4% of the community, who have like 50 warbands. There are 66, I think, at the moment. So you guys, you are the champions of Warcry. Well done. You've managed to do it. Most people have anywhere between 1 and 10 warbands if we mash those two groups together. That kind of makes sense, but again is kind of at odds with what you see in the community, because at least the vocal members of the community, right? One of the biggest selling points of Warcry, you don't need a lot of models, you don't need to invest a lot of money and a lot of time into your warbands. You can mix and match and hop around as you like. So with that, you would think that more players would have more different kinds of warbands. But if we go back to these other questions about bespokes and list building and that kind of thing, people tend to, at least this is what the numbers are telling me, buy a couple of warbands, and those are the warbands that they play. So I'm not sure if that's a result of how people are actually playing Warcry, or if they have some kind of warband loyalty that they really like how they play and they really like what they do, and they just like to stick with that. I'm not entirely sure. But again, I do want to say that with all of these questions, I did say it before, that you have to bear in mind that the people most likely to answer these questions would be more competitive leaning, because that's the kind of content I create on the channel. So having the majority of people saying, oh, we like playing bespokes, we like drawing from the decks, what that actually tells me is that there are far more people who would not interact with my content, and those people are more likely to be casually leaning, because if you're more casually leaning, why would you interact with competitive content? And that's a question we're hopefully going to try and answer in a minute. I do think that the numbers are actually much larger on the casual side of things, on the bespoke side of things. And this is something that Games Workshop in the future, when they're looking at this, might want to keep in mind. We've seen a lot of balance updates for match play, and whilst those are extremely important, and they're basically important for both casual players and for competitive players, because everyone wants balance, everyone wants the models that they're using and the list that they're building to be fair in whatever kind of situation that they're in. if there is this massive hidden contingent of casual one box bespoke warband players out there, then I think that Games Workshop would have a good mind to also catering towards them. I'm not exactly sure how they would do that. Maybe it's through more narrative content through White Dwarf. Maybe it's just producing more interesting bespokes. That might also be it. But yeah, I think that's something that they should keep in mind and something they should really look at for future releases. Okay, so the last thing that I did, and this is a little peek behind the scenes, under the hood of Off Meta Musings here, I looked at every single one of the videos that I've produced basically over the lifetime of the channel. I gave them all a tag: competitive, mixed, casual, or beginner. I've looked at the average number of views and average click-through rate of those videos to see which perform better, which will give you some kind of an indication about what kind of people are watching my content and what kind of people are interacting with the different types of videos that I put out. This is average number of views across all of those videos. We can see beginner content, you put out anything beginner and it gets more views than anything else. I kind of guessed this. This kind of should be the case, really. Whenever someone new wants to get into the game, they want to find things that will help them out. The interesting thing to look at here is between competitive, mixed, and casual. And what these numbers basically tell us, and what this chart is saying, is that even casual players, and we've seen from previous questionnaires that a good chunk of my viewer base are actually casual players, are interested in competitive content. Now, this is really interesting for me because what it's saying is that despite people saying, oh, I want to play a certain way, this is how I play, this is what I do, they are interested in the competitive scene, what happens in the competitive meta, and how it develops. You don't get that with competitive players. They don't watch casual content, whereas casual players are more likely to watch competitive and mixed. Mixed content is stuff like the FAQ breakdowns. It's basically for everybody, whether you're casual or you're competitive. It's something for you because it's something that affects Warcry as a whole. Competitive content, we're talking about things like tournament reports, meta breakdowns, competitive tier lists, that kind of thing. And casual content, we're talking about one box bespoke warbands, battle reports where I might just throw a couple of things together, mashing me into my opponent. That's what I'm talking about here. And yeah, so that's real interesting to me. Mixed content seems to get the most out of everything, and that kind of makes sense because it's a little bit of something for everybody. But yeah, that competitive content, I think you casual players, you're sneaky. You're watching it in the background and comparing it with the results from those questionnaires. It's real interesting to me to see what you're actually doing. This again is compounded by my click-through rate statistics. Click-through rate, for those people who don't know on YouTube, is basically if you see a thumbnail or you see a video anywhere and you click it, that's click-through rate. So it's kind of like the follow-on. Someone sees a thing, they say, oh yeah, that's interesting, I want to see that. They click on the thing, it goes to click-through rate statistics. On average, we're sitting on something like 4.3% across all of my videos. It's not fantastic. I know, it's something that I'm improving. We do see some interesting statistics. Competitive content has the highest click-through rate out of any of my other video types, despite the fact that more players seem to want to see mixed content. Competitive players are more likely to click on competitive content than casual players are likely to click on mixed content. That's something that you need to bear in mind. And again, of course, beginner content, if you're a beginner, you're going to see a video, you're going to want to watch it anyway. Okay, guys, we are almost there. Almost hit that goal for this year. 56% are still not subscribed to this channel. So come on, let's get in there. Let's hit those goals for this year. If you do want to throw some more support my way, you can join me here on YouTube. You can join me here on Patreon. You can join me over on Streamlabs. Either way, you are going to get to see behind the scenes content. You're going to get to see stuff before it's released, and you are going to have a little bit of a say into the kind of content that I create in the future. But regardless, if you are a new viewer or you're a returner, thank you very much for watching. Now, let's get back to the video. All of this stuff really gives me the idea, and this is the kind of overview of where I think the actual Warcry community is. I think that most of the community play in a casual setting, a very casual setting. So we're going to be drawing from the cards. Most of them like to play their bespoke warbands. They not necessarily one box bespokes. I think that's a very small part of the community, but the majority of people like to say, okay, here's my bespoke. I'm going to bring a guy in from another faction just because he looks cool, or maybe I'm going to bring in like a Fulmaraid Crusher, or I'm going to bring in a Centaurian Marshal, something like that. And that's really how the majority of people in Warcry are actually playing. A small amount of people, maybe 25%, are those kind of, I don't want to say tournament players, but those competitively minded players who will actively build a list with intent, saying, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to build it. I'm going to have several allies in there. I'm going to have my thralls. I'm going to build to a specific thing. I'm going to dip into compendium teams. I'm going to build out a bespoke build, whatever I need to build the kind of list that I want. And that's where I think the community is at the moment. Now, the question for me as a content creator and as someone who goes to events and as someone who promotes events as much as possible is how to capture those casual players and encourage them not to change the way that they play, because that's not really what I'm here to do, but to encourage them to play in more events and to see, okay, this is something that I can have fun with. Because you can see it. If you go through all of my tournament reports and you look at all of the lists that people are actually bringing, the majority of them are just one box something plus an ally. And they are totally fine and they have fun with that. So we want to capture more of those people who are thinking, okay, I like to play Warcry, I want to get better at the game. I enjoy playing what I play, but I want to get more games in, and maybe an event is the way to do that. So that's a question for the TOs, and that's a question, I think, for you guys, if you're watching this at home, if you are one of those casual players who otherwise wouldn't think about playing match play, either because it's got this perception of being sweaty tryhards or anything else, or for whatever other reason, just have a think. And if there are any events happening near you, give one a go, because I almost guarantee you that you'll have a good time. For the most part, everyone's pretty cool in this community anyway. But yes, that's it. That's it for me for today. Thank you very much for watching. As always, if you want to see more stuff like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comment section below what kind of a player you are, what kind of lists you like building, if you're beer and pretzels or if you're super hardcore, I'm gonna go to every event, super sweaty guy. Let me know. We'll have a good talk about it. Thank you very much again. That's the end of the video. I've been Itan, this has been Musings, and we will see you next time.